Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Pooja and this is my channel Ready Step Pooja. If you're new to the channel, thanks so much for stopping by, and if you're coming back, thanks so much for coming on back. Before we get started, as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. As you can see from the title of this video, today I am going to be talking about my April wrap-up. Now, April, for some reason, not for some reason, I know exactly why, I was just really busy with things at work and doing some things in my personal life that made April kind of a not so amazing reading month for me. I only read 4 books this month, which is still pretty good, honestly. Like, I read 1 book per week. I mean, I'm okay with that. I'm pretty happy with that, actually. But definitely not as many as I have read some months in the past. But all of these were pretty cool books, so I'm excited to share them with you today. So let's just jump right on in. What's actually interesting is because I was traveling a bit this month, none of the books I read were actually physical books, surprisingly. So they were all either ebooks on my Kindle or audiobooks. So that's just a fun fact for the month. Let's just jump right on into this. The first book that I have to talk about is Dracula by Bram Stoker. This is, of course, a classic novel. Everyone knows about it. It's the story of Jonathan Harker, who is sort of our main character, who is a British character and then travels to Transylvania to the castle of Count Dracula, and eventually Harker realizes that Dracula is in fact a vampire and has some nefarious intentions, and it kind of goes back then between Harker and his story and just kind of figuring out who Dracula is, and also his fiance and sort of her story, and she sort of goes and meets one of her friends who eventually then becomes a vampire herself. And then I don't want to give too much away for those of you who haven't actually read the story or heard the story before, but it is a fun adventure novel of people trying to basically fight evil in the form of Count Dracula, our vampire, our famous vampire. So I actually picked up Dracula because I have been trying to read a few more classics this year, because I thought it was something that I thought would, sort of add to my reading. And I've just been having a lot of trouble with, keeping my interest in different classics, because the language is sometimes just a little too obtuse and I find my mind drifting away. And so I just haven't had that much luck with all the classics that I've tried this year. So I thought, oh, maybe I should do something that's like really exciting and a little scary to kind of keep my attention. And so I picked up Dracula, and hey, it actually worked. So I really loved the novel. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was definitely really scary, and I definitely got the sort of horror vibes. There were definitely parts when they were, especially when Bram Stoker is describing Dracula and sort of the mysteriousness of the castle and sort of all the weird characteristics about his physical persona. I definitely started getting sort of the heebie-jeebies about it. Didn't know sort of the ending of the story going in, so I wasn't really sure, like, is Dracula going to win or lose, or what's going to happen? So I actually really found this to be a fun classic novel. Definitely was a little scary, but I really, really enjoyed it compared to some of the other classics I've tried. The next book that I have to talk about is The Ride of a Lifetime by Bob Iger, who is the CEO of Disney, for those of you who don't know. This is kind of one of those like business self-helpy books, like story of my life in the form of here are 10 lessons for someone trying to make it in business. But I thought what was cool about this is, one, I'm a huge Disney fan. I love Disney movies and going to Disney World and sort of everything about the Disney universe. And so I was just really excited to kind of hear from the guy who sort of runs the whole thing today. But in the context of like other business memoirs or books written by business leaders, I thought Bob Iger actually goes into a ton of detail about the business rationale behind some of the acquisitions that Disney has recently made, and how they've really turned things around by buying Marvel, buying Lucasfilm, buying Pixar, and all of those were decisions that he was at the helm of. So it was really interesting kind of hearing about all the mechanics of all those things. He also really just kind of doesn't, cut any corners when it comes to talking seriously about people at Disney who have had a history of things like sexual harassment allegations and stuff like that. And so I think he was very open about those things and didn't try to sugarcoat anything, which was unexpected. But I think I appreciated that, and something that I didn't really think any business leader would really do for sake of just like maintaining sort of the reputation of the company. But he's just really honest about it and how Disney kind of went about addressing those things. And so I thought that piece of it was really interesting. And me personally, I kind of work in the corporate world, and I just thought some of those like acquisition decisions were really interesting, and learning about, okay, what is Disney's sort of overarching strategy and why did they make some of those decisions was a cool question for me. May not be for everyone else, but I enjoyed listening to the audiobook of this book written by Bob Iger. The third book that I have to talk about is She of the Mountains by Vivek, Shreya, who is an Indian-Canadian author. And this book just kind of came up on my recommended in Libby, and I was like, oh, sounds interesting. So I picked it up and I loved it. It was such an interesting, short but interesting novel. It basically juxtaposes a Hindu epic story having to do with Parvati, who is one of the sort of main goddesses in the Hindu pantheon, and just sort of her, the myths and epics that surround her persona, and juxtaposes that with the story of a young boy growing up in Canada trying to come to terms with his sexuality and his relationship with his body and how he is perceived among his social circle. And so it was a really interesting and unexpected juxtaposition, but one that really made sense as the novel kind of went on. And I could definitely tell that Vivek Shreya was introducing a lot of ideas that came from his own personal experience. There are some aspects of the novel that really kind of speak of the pain that many people go through as they're coming to terms with sexual orientation and gender identity and things like that. And it was just a really, really fascinating look at these sort of very personal issues surrounding a modern day character and how those are kind of reflected in some of these religious epics as well that I've grown up with. So I really found this to be a fascinating book, and I know Vivek Shreya has a lot of other novels as well, so I'm really excited to pick up some of his future works. And then the last book that I read in April was Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata, who is a Japanese author. This book was really interesting. I wasn't really sure about it going in because I was like, what? But basically the premise is that it follows our main character, Kiko, who is a worker at a convenience store, and she's, I think, 35 or 36 years old. And she doesn't really have any aspirations to do anything else besides work in the convenience store. She's not married or is not dating anyone, and doesn't really have any aspirations to start a family or anything like that. And it's this really interesting analysis of a person who just falls outside the boundaries of what social expectations are. And it's kind of her story of trying to go through life with people around her being like, what do you mean you don't want a family or a career? You just kind of want to be this, mediocre person who's just living your life on your own. Like, it's just incomprehensible to people in her life that she would want that. And it really got me thinking, because I feel like we definitely have all these messages coming in to us throughout our lives where it's like, either you have to be at least super ambitious about your career or be super dedicated to, starting a family and having children and things like that. And there's not really sort of a place for anyone whose dream is just to exist and to enjoy life and to not really do anything, crazy in their career, and to also not have a family. And a person like that is just, it's hard for people who have just zeroed in on social norms to even conceptualize that. So I thought that analysis was just so interesting. And I also just loved the descriptions of the convenience store and how it's really a part of Kiko's identity throughout the book. And how she's just like, she finds so much purpose in this seemingly, non-glamorous job of being a convenience store worker, but really she is actually playing a vital part in society. She is helping people every single day in her job. And it's just not something that other people can understand, but for her, that is her purpose and that is what gives her joy. And we should respect all people's dreams, no matter if they fall in sort of what society considers to be success or not. So I really loved Sayaka Murata's analysis presented in that book, and it's actually really interesting because she herself worked in a convenience store for a long time as well, so she really kind of gets that character. And so absolutely loved that book. So yeah, those were the 4 books that I finished in April this year. Again, not like a huge reading month, but also not too bad. I'm pretty happy with that. And all great books that I would definitely recommend. I have just been killing it this year with finding books that I've really enjoyed. And I haven't really had any real books that I, have DNF'd or anything like that. So that's awesome. And, fingers crossed that that continues and I continue to find all these amazing books. But let me know if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts were on them, or if, this video has now led you to consider picking any of these up. I would love to know. And yeah, that's all I've got for today, and I will see you guys next time with the next video. But for now, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. And I will see you all next time. All right, bye-bye.